Hi, Caroline. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Lauren. Thank you so much for having me.
So great to have you on. And how fun is it? We were just chatting before the podcast that we have met on online circles before, and we're kind of reconnecting a few years later. So great to have you.
Yeah, I love that. So good.
So good. So we are going to be talking today about human design and how human design relates to you and your business and how it can help you really feel good in the hours that you're working and feel really aligned in your business. So how about we get started, Caroline? I'd love to know, let us know a little bit about who you help and how you help them.
Yeah, this is great. So I basically help business owners at any stage get back into their zone of genius, use their time more effectively and efficiently, and ultimately make more of an impact without necessarily having to do anything more. So that, in the early stages of business, that looks like really making sure that people are doing what they actually need to be doing to move forward in a way that's aligned for them energetically. And then further along in business, I generally come in the space around team and helping people to understand their role and their genius within a team, and then how to build out a team that actually supports them using human design, which is super cool. So as far as I can, really explain to people, every one of us is completely unique energetically. And therefore we want to create a business that is completely unique energetically. And human design literally just gives us a blueprint to understand that energy, and then how we're going to use that through our business. And so, yeah, that's what I love, helping people to uncover just how they can do that so that it feels really good and they can make the impact that they want to make. I know that people that are attracted to me and what I do, the impact is kind of the number one thing. Yes, they absolutely want to make an income. They absolutely want to have success in all the ways that we can explain success. But ultimately, what got them into what they're doing comes down to impact and really making a change to the world. And so I really want to be able to help them to amplify that.
Yeah, that is the beautiful thing. And absolutely the people who listen to my podcast are in the same boat. Like, I know way back, I started out in business school, and I got the impression that it was really competitive and it was just all about the money. And I got the impression that business wasn't about helping others. And I ended up dropping out, and I kind of connected to business later once I realized that you can help others and run a business. Like, you can do both. Like, there's a reason that we're not, I don't know, working like an Amazon business or something like that. Like, that just wouldn't light me up in the same way,
Yes.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with that. Yes.
totally. So I'd love to know, how did you get into human design? I love personality types and all of the different, Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram and my Strength Finder and all of those kinds of my zone of genius. I've done a ton, but I don't know as much about human design. So let us know, how did you discover it? How'd you get into it?
Yeah. So I had been in business by the time I met human design. I'd been in business for a couple of years, and I had some success and had enjoyed being in business, and I was ready to make the transition into business full time and out of a long-term career in healthcare. And I was working with a coach, and she had gotten into human design, and so she shared a little bit about it. And so ultimately I went and ran my chart. And I think maybe one of the things that appealed to me about human design was that it wasn't me answering a series of subjective questions where I might get a different answer on a different day, depending on how I answered the questions. I loved that there was kind of that aspect to it, that it was, the time, date, and place that I was born. And there was not a lot that I couldn't change that with any way that I answered the question. So I think maybe the bit more sort of scientific side of me liked the idea that it was kind of set in concrete, but then the already woo side of me was like, oh, this is interesting. We're getting into the lands of astrology, etc. So I ran my chart, read my chart, started to dive in to find some information. And I'd have to say, initially, I loved what I read, but I also found parts of what I learned about myself didn't really resonate. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, this is interesting. And I find this happens for a lot of people. You know, I found out I was a projector, and that made sense to me. But then
Yeah.
I also found out that there were some aspects of my chart where I was like, oh, I don't know if that's really me. Like, I'm not sure if that's really how I'm living right now. And I guess what it did was take me down a path to kind of explore that, to really discover those parts of me that I wasn't aware of, and then
Oh.
figure out what felt right for me. And so I definitely wasn't one of those people who just got straight into human design and was like 100% all in, loved it from the start. I did have that kind of interesting first 6 months, which I think makes it powerful for me, because I now often talk to people who are a bit skeptical. You know, they're maybe not super woo, you know, and I'll just say to them, look, it's totally cool. Like, you can go on a journey, figure this out, take what you want, leave what you want. That's totally fine. And so I just started to dive deeper and deeper into the pieces. And what it really provided for me was an understanding of how I'm going to do business differently. And I had really struggled to execute on a lot of the strategies that I had been given in business. And so as I came to understand my design, I could see exactly why that was, and just the small things that I needed to tweak to make it feel so much more natural to me. So that's kind of how I got into the space. And I just started using it with my existing clients and bringing it in more and more. And then you know, over time, that was what people continually were asking me for in the context of business. And it was this beautiful, natural unfolding. Yeah.
Nice. I think that's so fascinating because I totally like, I mean, I'm a little bit woo, and I'm also like very like logical, you know, I can do both, right?
Yeah.
And I'm really all about following my intuition to kind of lean into, you know, what is my coach saying? What is this, you know, guru or whatnot suggesting for me? And I can follow that. But once I started really leaning into my intuition and feeling aligned in what I'm meant to do, things started to fall into place more easily for me. So I absolutely love the intuition. But I also really resonate with that idea of, you know, doing your, you know, but I don't even know the terms, you know, looking at your human design and not totally resonating with it.
Yeah.
So I know for some people listening, some of the people who listen to the podcast absolutely already know their type, and they know a decent amount about human design. And then other people are really quite new to it. So I'd love for maybe if you could let us know like how I guess there are 5 types, right? Could you give us just like maybe a brief overview of how you see human design?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So there are 5 types. And when I say this to people, they're like, oh, yep, great. You're putting me in boxes. And I'm like, no, no, no. There's so much more
There's
to it.
so much more to it,
So much
right?
more.
There
Yes.
really
And
is.
there is actually about 1 billion different charts that you could end up with. So I always say to people, there's only about 7 or 8 people walking the earth that have the same chart as you. So that's the level of differentiation we're creating like between people. But the 5 types are a really great place to start. They tend to be the information that people can give. When I asked you, that was the thing you were able to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with manifesting generators, which is what you are, Lauren.
Yes.
So our manifesting generators have this beautiful kind of sacral energy that is lit up for the things that they love doing. Manifesting generators often move quickly. They tend to be multi-passionate. They like to have their fingers in a few different pies. And they're often extremely successful in business because they can manage multiple facets at the same time. And they really have that beautiful energy that they can put behind something. And when a manifesting generator is lit up to do something, there ain't nobody getting in their way. So that's a Manny Gen. Do you resonate with that?
Yes, absolutely.
I could see your smile as
And
I
I
was
don't
saying
think,
that.
because I've read about it before, and I think the thing that I found challenging, and from what I've heard from other people who specialize in it, is it's not like, oh, I'll just read that type and understand it. Like there's so many nuances and complexities to human design that I've read about it before, and I was like, so I'm like a combo of a manifestor and a generator. Like I don't, and so I really liked how you explained that. It was so much clearer for us. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think I know this is one of my strengths, is being able to explain these things. So,
Yeah.
okay, so then we have the generator type. So the generator type also has that sacral fire energy for what they are doing. They tend to focus in one place. They tend to go deep rather than wide. And they really are the energy that gets projects done. So when we have a project that we want to get to completion, we want to have one or a team of generators that they'll really grab onto that project and push it through to its completion, as long as they feel lit up about it. So one of the key things with a generator is that if you have them doing work, or if they're doing work that they don't love, then they don't have access to that energy. So it's really about getting them.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got to be in their zone of genius. They've got to be doing what really lights them up. So that's our generators. Then the other type that you are kind of a combination of, in a way, is our manifestors. So our manifestors only make up about 7% of the population. So we're starting to get into our bit rarer types. So our manifestors are our fire starters. They're our initiators. They get projects going, but they're not always the best at getting them finished. And this is the thing about the types within human design, and why I love it for team dynamics, is because the manifestors get things started, and then the generators and manifesting generators tend to continue those projects onto completion. So manifestors tend to be that real sparky leadership energy, not a lot of care for whether people like their ideas or not. They just have those ideas, they're initiating, and they're moving forward with them. Big innovators energy in a manifestor. So then we've got two types left, two rarer types. So we have our projectors, which is what I am. Our projectors are our guides. So projectors generally see the world slightly differently to other people. They don't have access to a lot of consistent energy. And so within business, it's about finding unique and efficient ways to use what we do have, and also about making sure that we are waiting to actually be invited into something or recognized into something before we share that guidance. So otherwise it feels quite full on for the person that's receiving that guidance. So it can be a beautiful type in business, just requiring, to operate slightly differently. And that's something that I really kind of leaned into. And then our fifth type are our reflectors. They make up less than 1% of the population, so they're very rare. And our reflectors named so because they really are like a mirror. So they really do reflect back to us the health of society in general. And they commentate and provide insight into the way that the world is working, groups of people are working, society is working, so that we can actually every now and again have that opportunity to meet one of them and kind of look in the mirror and be like, are we really happy with what we're doing? Are we happy with what's going on? They're beautiful on a team to just kind of slide in and be like, hey, did you notice this? Hey, did you see this? Are you aware of this? And really bring beautiful insights. So yeah, they are our 5 types. All work, all can be very successful in business, contrary to what some people might tell you, all can be very successful in their own different ways. And then further along in business, having a rounded team with people sitting in the right positions with the right, the right pieces of the business, super, super powerful. So yes.
Wow.
Anyway, I'll stop there because I can just, you can probably hear I could talk all day, but that's our 5
You're in the
types.
right zone. But the thing I loved about it, and I don't know if your clients feel this, but as someone who works with clients, I was starting to think about the different clients that I have right now and wondering, we work differently. And part of the thing that I love in my work is to kind of really get to know someone and really get to know their individual strengths and how I can support them individually. And I think it would be so interesting to know what their type would be, because now I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's what's going on there, is that we have a different type or a different kind of tendency or whatnot. So I think it would be really fascinating to even know with your own clients to see where their strengths lie.
Yes, yes. And I think this is how I kind of came into the world, was because my coach had realized that, there was opportunities for her to understand us better by knowing our human design, and therefore
Mm.
introduced us. And that was the same way that I then brought it into the work that I was doing with my clients. And it was super helpful. I was, already within the small business social media space. It was really helpful to understand a little bit about people's design, my design, and I had always had manifesting generator business coaches up until then. And so,
Mm.
some of the things that are really natural for you guys, that's great, but it just wasn't going to work for me, because I had these pieces around recognitions and invitations and all that kind of thing. And so it was figuring out how I could bring that in. And so I think anything that we can do to know ourselves better and then know other people better, like, why would we not grab that bull by the horns and use it? Because that way we can just spend a lot more time doing things in a way that feels aligned for us.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And the better that we can know ourselves, the other thing too is it can help you see what you're going to be able to excel at in your business. That's the beautiful thing of running your own business, is you can really create things that are aligned for you, that are within your zone of genius. So you can really excel, because I think it's so easy for us to say, well, everyone can do that because it comes easily to me. So it must be easy for everybody else, right? And so when you can really get clear on what your particular strengths are, it can be such a huge eye opener for you when you're creating your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, as coaches and as people that are guiding other people in business, it can be really helpful to have that opportunity to see that through the lens of, okay, what's actually going to work for this person?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we see out there in the online space, and maybe this is a bit controversial to say, but what we see is a lot of people teaching the strategies that have worked for them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm always talking to my clients about is that that's great. And I know, like, those strategies work, because if they didn't work, people wouldn't put hundreds of thousands of dollars of ad spend behind them. Like, they must work, but they work for people because they're aligned with those people's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we want to be able to do is take the pieces and kind of build out a strategy that actually fits us energetically. And so we can take the best bits of everything that's out there and then just do it in a way that works really well for us. That's what creates the momentum. That's what really allows us to have that success, however we define that to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, one of the things that I teach my clients is how to, like the idea of time blocking or planning out your time so that you can be the most, especially if you want to work, like most of my clients want to work 20 hours a week. So if you want to work within that 20-hour place, like, how can you intentionally spend your time? But the thing that I found is sometimes, yes, like I'm more interested in planning, but then there's really a spectrum that we need to be aware of. Like, some people like it really, really, like, every detail is planned out, and other people like it to be really, really free, and resist when I say, have you tried planning out your time? So for me, it's so important to see the spectrum and to be aware of where you fall. Like, I'm kind of in the middle, where I like structure. I like flexibility and creativity within structure. And so this is just another way that I'm hearing from you, is we can really get to know our client personally, rather than saying, oh, this worked for me, so it should work for you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a really interesting piece to take that time to think about, why did this work for me? Like, what was it that was aligned
Mm,
about this that worked for me? And for us also, how can I do that again? How can I replicate that in a different area of my business, or even another area of my life? And then how can I take those pieces and then, manipulate them based on the energy of someone else? And I think, planning and structure and flow are conversations that, same as you, I have with my clients all the time, because
mhm,
finding a way to balance the structure and the flow, which for me are almost the masculine and feminine energies of
mhm.
business, is so important, because we have to have a solid foundation. We have to have that structure. But then most of us are in business because we don't want to be so structured in that we don't have any creativity. So it's kind of like, this is always going to have this beautiful interplay between these two pieces. And
Yeah.
yeah, based on your design, some people are definitely further to one or the other end of the spectrum. And then it's just figuring out how to be where you are and be able to make it work.
Absolutely. I love that. And one thing I wanted to ask you, speaking about individuality and what people are naturally feel aligned or that are their strengths, you also talked about, and I think this is really interesting about what you do, is you don't just talk about human design, but you talk about the zone of genius and how it aligns with that. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about that. Like, how does that work for you? How can you find out? Like, I mean, I've really looked into my zone of genius. I find that so fascinating. How can we learn a little bit about our zone of genius from our human design?
Yeah, so there are so the human design chart in and of itself gives you a map of who you are. And so within that map, there are certain particular areas that really lend themselves to interpretation as a zone of genius. So even starting with type, we can start that process of understanding where our zone of genius is, but then obviously we can dive into the layers of the chart, and it gives us very in-depth information as to like the energy that we are designed to predominantly put out into the world, right down to like the finer details of parts within your chart that tell you even what kind of business model will be best for you, what size groups are best for you to spend time in, whether you are best to create by yourself or in collaboration with other people. So it really does kind of get, right from the macro right down to the micro level of different pieces of your genius and how they sort of come together. As a general rule, our type and our profile, which is made up of a set of 2 numbers. So you might, mine is a 5-1, for example, but there's 12 different profiles. They have a lot to do with your personality and the way that you're designed to interact with the world. They are beautiful to have a look at in terms of business, because it talks about whether you are more suited to relationship style marketing, whether you're more suited to expert style marketing, whether you are more suited to sharing life experiences and mistakes that you've made through your content, or whether people are going to seek you out for facts and knowledge, book-based knowledge. So we can, like, there's so many layers and places that we can go, but we can basically build quite a comprehensive picture of you and how you best operate within that space. And obviously early in business, we do have to be a bit of a jack of all trades, but it can help you to understand, okay, well, this is going to be the easiest way for me to do the thing that I'm maybe not so aligned with. And then also when I make my first hire, this is the energy that I need the person that I'm first hiring to have, because this is where I'm at my, potentially at my weakest. And so I'm going to hire for that weakness, and we can actually hire for that based on design, and basically fill the gaps in that way. So yeah. Did I answer your question?
So cool. Yeah, because I've thought about that before and I really didn't, I didn't have a clue where to look. So because I think most people listening, from what I know, is they would probably know their type. But so say if we wanted to look into, I'd like to learn a little bit more about my zone of genius, maybe what's the first step that someone could look at if they were looking at their numbers?
Yeah. So I would generate your chart and I would find out those 2 profile numbers. Like we call them profile numbers. And if you want to generate your chart through my website, then you'll actually be able to click through and get information. So I've
cool.
set it up
Yeah.
so you can get some information. So yeah. So basically that's probably where I would go next, because I feel like it is super helpful. And so I would have a look at, there's only 6 numbers. So every profile is a combination of these 6 numbers. And so I would just go and familiarize yourself with the 2 that you have. So if it was me, I have a 5 and a 1. So I would read the information. You can you can pretty much Google anything when it comes to human design now. Obviously, there's some really good quality content out there, but if you know those numbers, you could go on a little, down a little rabbit hole and just use that information as a bit of a way to understand the way that people see you. So what they see as your genius based on which of those lines you have. That's a really great place to start. And if you're listening to this episode and you're like, Caroline, don't even know where to start, just reach out and we can just DM and I'll quickly make sure that you have the right information for your lines. But I think that's a great place to start.
Awesome. Well, I would love that. And we'll definitely link it up in the show notes, because that's the thing that I found with human design is some sites seem very reputable and some sites seem a little bit like, I don't know about this.
Yes. And there's so much information. It's very easy to kind of get down the rabbit hole and then be like, how did I even get here?
Yeah. So we'll absolutely link it up in the show notes. Well, it has been so fantastic having you on. Is there anything that you would add to or share that we haven't shared yet in the podcast?
I think I would just say that, everyone has their own map to success when it comes to their business. And a lot of it is trial and error and really finding the things that work for us. And so for me, human design, it basically just gives us that step ahead because we have that map. But then no matter how good any map is, it still doesn't actually tell you what it's going to look like to go on that journey. And so it really is about like having all that information, but then it's about implementing it and experimenting with it and, seeing what resonates for you and taking the bits that do and leaving the bits that don't. So if it's something that you've looked into before and you're like, oh, I don't know about that, I hear you, because that was me. Maybe it's worthwhile circling back, even if it is just to some of the more high level concepts, and just seeing if there's something there that can help you understand yourself better. Because in the end, I think, well, for me, my whole life is about understanding myself better. I feel like that's a big part of my journey. So yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I totally agree. Understanding myself and my kids better is my big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let us know, let the listeners know, where can we find out more about you? Where can we connect with you?
Yeah. So my most kind of frequented place to hang out with me is Instagram. My handle is at Caroline Lynda Coach. And if you do want to jump over and check out your chart through my software, so you can actually click through and get some information, not just this weird map that makes no sense, then you can just go to carolinelynda.com/free chart, all as one word, and that will give you the opportunity to go through the process there and connect in with me. So they're probably the two best places. I have a podcast. I'm in all the places, but go to one of those and then we can connect and
we can start
start from there.
Awesome. Well, we will be sure to link all of that up in the show notes so that listeners can connect with you and learn more about their human design, because I know now I want to look up those numbers from your chart. So thank you so much for sharing with us today, for coming on the podcast. It was great to have you.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much. Thank you to the listeners.